Hey guys, it's Brian from PhoneArena here, and today we're going to take a look at the HTC EVO 4G LTE as well as the Samsung Galaxy S3 and kind of put them head to head. Now both of these devices are offered from Sprint and both of them are flagship LTE devices. They actually run the same Qualcomm S4 processor, although the Samsung has 2 gigs of RAM whereas the HTC only has 1. Both feature 8 megapixel cameras on the back, so those are also pretty similar. And the HTC features a 4.7 inch display, whereas the Samsung has a 4.8. So, on paper, these two devices are fairly similar, and it can be hard to pick between the two. So let's take a look and see what sets them apart. The first thing we're going to look at is the design. As you can see, the HTC here goes with a black color scheme, whereas the Galaxy S3 uses white, and then it also has a pebble blue version available as well. Taking a look at the HTC for a minute here, we have this nice large 4.7 inch display. It is powered by a Super LCD2 panel, which has IPS technology, which means that the viewing angles are very awesome. You can go over 170 degrees and still see things, which is really nice. Down at the bottom we've got 3 capacitive buttons. These are your standard Android ice cream sandwich buttons with back, home, and multitasking. Up top we have a speaker grill and the front-facing camera. If we flip the phone over, we're going to find that it's a fingerprint magnet, as you can see, but it is separated into 2 pieces. The bottom is part of the aluminum unibody, which we're seeing on the front as well, and then the top here is a plastic cover. This is a glossy plastic, which is not very well received in the community, but as long as it's not fingerprinted, it doesn't look too bad, but as you can see, it fingerprints very easily. This red band in the middle houses the kickstand, which is a fantastic feature. The phone can be set in 3 different ways, and the kickstand will hold. It is extremely sturdy. It does have some spring assist once you really get to it at the end, but getting it open and closing it really takes a pull and a push before it'll do what you want. That is nice, and it speaks to the build construction and the quality of it. Along the edges here, you're going to find that it's got a silver trim. However, this is still part of the unibody. The aluminum has just been milled down to its natural color, so it provides a nice contrast. We also have a physical camera shutter key here to go along with the power button and the 3.5mm headset jack up top. Overall, the device feels extremely solid in your hand. That's thanks in part to the unibody construction. It does feature Gorilla Glass 2, so it's a great screen with fantastic glass on top of it for scratch resistance. The EVO 4G LTE really just feels extremely premium. Everything about it is just, it's like it's a handcrafted device almost. HTC's put a lot of attention into the design, and it really shows. Moving over to the Galaxy S3, the design is actually going to look really familiar because this is basically the same thing as the Galaxy S2. Now, of course, it is bigger. It's got a 4.8-inch display like we mentioned. The Galaxy S2 had either a 4.3 or 4.5-inch display, depending on which version we're talking about. But overall, the aesthetics are pretty much the same. On this white version here, we have the silver trim ring, and then the back is basically just flat white with your camera. It is constructed of plastic or polycarbonate with a scratch-resistant front display. It's not Gorilla Glass 2. It's something that Samsung uses their own, but it has stood up very well on the Galaxy S2 as well as the Galaxy Nexus, so no real complaints there. But overall, the feel of the phone just isn't quite the same. It definitely feels like it's plastic, and it just doesn't feel quite as nice as the HTC. The build quality feels great. We're not worried about this phone breaking or falling apart or anything of that nature. It's just when you have a flagship device like this, you should instantly feel something when you pick up the phone, and we just don't with the Galaxy S3. It feels very much the same as our Galaxy S2. It looks very much the same, and save for the rounded corners and the lack of the hump on the back with the silver trim down there, the two devices could almost be identical, and to the casual user, they may not even notice a difference. One of the things we especially don't like, and this is just being a little picky, not sure if you can see it here, but this silver ring is actually brushed. It's a plastic bezel, but it's made to look like brushed aluminum. We just kind of feel like if you're going to do something like that, go ahead and use actual aluminum, go ahead and use a premium material, and that way your device will feel a little bit better and justify the high price tag. But we digress. This is a 4.8-inch display, like we said. It's using the HD Super AMOLED technology, which means the viewing angle is not quite as good, but it is still actually pretty darn good. The big difference is the color saturation. Both of these displays have oversaturated colors, there's no doubt about that, but things do look more natural on the LCD display versus the AMOLED display. AMOLED has the blue hue that it's been known for, and it's still apparent and still kind of comes through, given the white's a very blue tone. Along the rest of the phone, you just have your volume rocker and your power button on the two sides and your headset jack. And then you also have a physical home key. To the sides of here, and it's not really picking up probably in the bright light, but you have a back and a menu capacitive button over here, and this breaks with the Android design scheme. Like we mentioned on the HTC, it's got the 3 keys that follow suit with the Galaxy Nexus and part of the ice cream sandwich design language. However, Samsung has not only replaced the task switcher with a menu button, but it's also moved the back and the menu buttons over. Kind of a moot point, but that's one of the things we've been complaining about Android from the beginning, is that it's just not unified, and moves like this from the maker of the last 2 Nexus devices really don't help bring that unification together. Now, both of these phones run Android 4.0, however, they both are customized with the manufacturer skins. Of course, HTC is running their Sense overlay, and Samsung is running their latest version of Touchwiz, which they have dubbed the Nature UX. We'll take a quick look at Sense here. It should look pretty familiar. Nothing drastically different, but as you can see, things are kind of scaled back. We don't have the spinning home screen anymore. Our clock is naked, which we really like. The launcher down at the bottom is a little bit different, and it's also customizable, which isn't something we've seen from HTC devices in the past. HTC actually admitted that they really took Sense a bit too far, that they've heard users wanting them to scale it back, and they've listened, and they've done that. Again, just little things like this app drawer here, scrolling side to side instead of up and down, puts it in line with the ice cream sandwich design language. We'll open our People app here, and we can see, while it's not the same one you found on a Galaxy device, it does kind of have the same layout with a large picture at the top and then the contact information down below. HTC still has their tabs, so they put their customization into it, but by and large, it definitely is well scaled back and very well executed, and still follows a lot of the same principles that Google did with Ice Cream Sandwich. On the other hand, we're going to find that there's not a lot that's changed with the Nature UX and Touchwiz. There's a lot of improvements, a lot of enhancements, but overall, the average user is going to pick it up and not notice much of a difference. One of the things that we really noticed right off the bat, and you can see here, is how much space is down here that just gets wasted by this launcher. Both of these phones run the standard 4x4 interface, which is something we'd like to see bumped up now that we have higher resolution displays. There's no reason we can't have a 5 or even 6x4 or 5 layout for these Android phones, but that's something that we'll see later on down the road probably. However, everything's just a little bit more cramped on this device than it is on the HTC phone. The device is very large and the display's big, so there's still plenty of room in between, but it's just those little things where the interface kind of takes over where it shouldn't. It feels a little obtrusive. The app drawer is actually done very well. You have a lot of customization options. One of the things we really like is the ability to hide apps that we don't use, because there is plenty of stuff on here that we're not ever going to use. Things like the Samsung Game Hub, or maybe you don't use Flipboard or Chat On or whatever it is. So it's nice to kind of clean up this app drawer. So Samsung has made some really good improvements on Touchwiz, but overall it's still kind of cartoony, it's still intrusive, and if we look at our contacts here, for instance, you're going to find that it's not updated with the newer design language. It looks actually kind of similar to a lot of the feature phones we saw 5 years ago from Samsung. So while they've made improvements, while they've run it deeper into the operating system, it still isn't quite there. One of the examples we brought up on our review is the Homescreen Clocks, and we'll put them side by side here. So you can see the HTC one, it's nice, it's big, it's bold, it's got the high contrast very easy to read. Whereas over here on the Samsung one, it's got this really pretty picture in the background, but at the same time it's got a lot going on here. You can see the weather over here, but that's kind of cut off. You can actually, let's zoom in a bit, and now you can see the city that we're in. But back here you probably can't see that because that light background with the light text just makes everything very busy. And busyness is something we've definitely found within the Touchwiz interface. If we bring up the camera here, you're going to find all the different icons on the side. Something we're used to, something we've seen on pretty much every phone in the past, but it's also something that's old. It's just carried over to this new interface. We're going to take a look at the HTC here real quick, and you can see it's real nice. The display is run edge to edge for the viewfinder. You do still have the icons on the side, but they're a lot less obtrusive. They're kind of almost semi-transparent. They've got naked backgrounds. And then another real nice feature is the fact that you can either take a picture or you can start the video camera right from the same interface. So you don't have to switch back and forth between the two. So little things like that that just shows that there's a lot more what we would call thought put into sense. Just HTC has really listened to users, they've scaled things back, and that's not to say that the Touchwiz UI is bad. However, we really just prefer the look and the overall feel and the performance of Sense over what we see on the Samsung with the Galaxy S3 and the Touchwiz Nature UX. Let's quickly look at the stock browsers here. Both of them are plenty capable, they perform pretty well. You can see the little blink animation is still here and present on the HTC EVO 4G. We originally saw that on the 1X and weren't a big fan of it. It is a little annoying, but it's not extremely obtrusive, doesn't really get in the way. On the Samsung side, things are much better. You don't have that blink animation, but one of the things we didn't like about this is the fact that it doesn't really zoom in where we want it to go. And as you can see there, even though we double-clicked, it opened a link. So let's try this again. And when you zoom in, it only goes that far. So of course you can use your pinch to zoom further in and out. And it is very smooth, but not ideal double-click performance on either of these devices. That said, and as you can see on our little headline right here, Chrome is out of beta, so it's an official Android app, and it is a fantastic browser, and we recommend that you download it right away on both of these phones. If you're not using that, something like Firefox or Dolphin browser. But as good as these stock browsers are, there are just better options available in the market. So don't put too much stock into how the built-in browsers are performing. Now, we said earlier that we like the Sense interface just because it's a little bit more grown up, a little less intrusive, but that's subjective. Objectively, it actually appears that the Touchwiz UI is affecting the performance of the Galaxy S3 because even though it's got more RAM than the HTC and theoretically should outperform it in benchmarks tests, the HTC beat it and quite handily in all the tests we put it through. Benchmarks are just benchmarks, but when they're running such similar hardware, especially when they have the same processor, we'd really expect them to be within spitting distance of each other, if nothing. But for instance, the EVO scored almost 800 points higher on Quadrant than the Galaxy S3 did, so that's something we were kind of surprised to see. Little things on the Galaxy kind of bother us, like the toggle widgets up top. They're fantastic to have, but as you can see, every time you slide down the notification bar, they slide over. Likely to show you that you can slide and access more, and that's nice. However, it's just kind of annoying. It's sort of like the spinning home screen on Sense 3.5, where every time you unlock the phone, all your home screens spun up to you. It just takes a second longer to do things, so if I want to get to Wi-Fi or Bluetooth, I've got to wait for that to go. Other things, like the fact that the home button takes a second to respond on the Samsung. The reason behind this is actually the S Voice. If we double tap it here, it'll launch S Voice, and you can talk to it and have your little personal Siri-like assistant. But when you hit it once, it's waiting for just a second to see if there's another tap coming, and then when it's not, it does take you back to the home screen. But you can see our thumb is really far off and has been away for a while before it comes back. Now that feature can be disabled, but at the same time, we like having that double-click functionality for S Voice to search for things. So just some things that Samsung definitely kind of is falling by the wayside and has some work to do with their interface. And on both of these phones, another reason that we really don't like manufacturer skins all that much, because if these were pure Google devices, we have a bet that they would be running a lot faster even than they are. But like we said, we like the Sense interface better. It's faster. Not that the Samsung isn't fast by any means, but every now and again it had its moments where it kind of stuttered, just lagged for a second or two, which we did not find on the HTC. Both of these devices are great flagship-worthy devices for both the manufacturers. You really can't go wrong which way you pick. We realize design and software is very subjective. The HTC does outperform it, and in our opinion, we really like the design a lot more. It just feels so much better to use. It feels like an expensive high-end device, whereas the Galaxy S3 just doesn't. But they both have large, gorgeous displays, and they both run very fast, and we're really looking forward to Sprint getting their LTE network up and running to see what kind of cellular speeds we can get out of them.